So, first I want to talk about Coach K, though. Coach K and Duke. I'm a Coach K guy. I'm a Coach K guy. I think like most of America. He's a obviously a fantastic world class basketball coach. Appears to be a pretty good guy. I do not know him personally, but he appears to be a pretty good guy from what I have seen over the course of decades. I'm sure, like everybody, he's got his opportunities, his issues, what have you, but seems to be a pretty good guy. And he certainly has represented his university well, his sport extremely well. He has represented the U.S. extremely well as the U.S. Olympic coach and appears to get along with players at both the college and pro level and somehow makes the magic work. So I applaud him for all of his good works. Now, I must say that I am a little bit of a Duke, I don't want to say a Duke hater. I think there's some things to really like and admire about Duke. The same as Stanford, to a degree, Northwestern from time to time. But really, those two big schools, Stanford and Duke, because they really compete at the very highest levels of Division One athletics in an environment where there is still some academic expectations that are real, not imagined. Because there's a lot of stuff we're out here talking about academically, which is just completely imagined. Completely imagined. Like we're literally making it up. And I guess it makes everybody feel good, so that's why we keep on talking about it. I digress for a couple of seconds, but when I heard folks earlier this week talking about Ben Simmons and LSU, and somehow he's doing something academically that is making him ineligible for the John Wooden Award. Now, this is by everyone's account, this is like the best player to come out of college basketball in the past decade or so. Maybe since LeBron was coming into the pros, although LeBron didn't come out of college, came out of high school. But he's that good, that talented, that well-rounded. Came from an international background, so probably had a little bit more flavor and exposure. Very, very clean-cut looking guy. I mean, has a nice normal haircut. Wears his clothes appropriately. I mean, his uniform appears to fit. No discernible tattoos anywhere on his body. I mean, this is about as clean-cut a brother as you will see, just about anywhere. Now, that being said, and just about as clean-cut a college athlete, you would say, just about anywhere. That being said, he chose to go to LSU for whatever motivated him. I think it had something to do with a coach or something he had some connection with. Went there, but now people are up in arms because he had some sort of academic impropriety, which is not allowing him to participate in pursuing the Wooden Award as college basketball's best athlete, which I just think is just completely silly and ludicrous, because something is allowing him to continue to be on the court every night, or a few nights a week when LSU has games. LSU may even make the basketball tournament, the NCAA tournament, if they make the tournament, if they make the NCAA tournament or the NIT tournament. There's been no indication that they're not going to allow him to participate. So whatever he did, they sat him down for like the first quarter or first half of one basketball game. I don't know if he missed some classes or something, but it couldn't have been that deep. So I can't understand why all of a sudden they have, told him that he can no longer, be eligible for the Wooden Award. But that being said, I went astray for a minute, just because that's just kind of a whole nother hot button, because I just think that the expectations around the expectations from people who are not in college athletics and who never played a real college sport about what real athletes on real campuses are doing is totally unrealistic. Totally, totally unrealistic. Dudes are not practicing 3-4 hours a day, going to training table, being in meetings, lifting weights, going to early practices, early runs in the morning, practices in the afternoon, all this other stuff, trying to do a little bit of work at some point, hang out with their friends, have a social life, have a girlfriend, do whatever. All that's not getting done in one day, folks. It's not. Get over it. It's not. So I mean, we might as well just put some realistic expectations in place at a D1 level. in particular, you're not going to be doing that much in academically on a lot of these campuses. And therefore, that's why they have all of these other programs, summer programs, winter break programs where guys can take extra classes and get extra credits to enable them to bring their GPA up in order to get back on the field. That's what it is. So, at any rate, going back to Duke, I celebrate Duke and Stanford in that light and Coach K in that light because I think he does run a serious program. Although now with this one and done thing, I think everybody's a little bit compromised. But historically, over 3 or 4 decades now at Duke, been a tremendous guy. The issue I have with Coach K is this. Coach K has enough. He has enough of a reputation at this point, and he's earned it at this point, that he doesn't have to continue to entertain and recruit the kinds of athletes that he does, or at least he doesn't have to make excuses for them and not punish them when they do the wrong thing. And what I'm speaking about specifically is that there's a guy named Grayson Allen who got some attention the past couple of weeks, past few weeks of the basketball season, because he has actually had 2 separate incidences where he has tripped opposing players on other teams. And he's blatantly tripped these guys. So you kind of ask yourself, okay, well, why is that happening and what's acceptable about that? And the problem that you have with Coach K is that this is not his first athlete that has done something like this. He's had a few guys who have done things like this. Christian Laettner himself did some things like this. And he had a couple other guys who did things like this. And it puts some of his guys in the position and in the light of being like the spoiled Duke athlete who is entitled and who looks like a punk. And unfortunately, it usually draws into also the stereotype that it's the Duke kids already get kind of the rich, spoiled white kids from private school kind of label, although there's certainly plenty of black kids that go there. That historically has been kind of their label as a Duke program. So it kind of puts a light on that same kind of thing when you have this be a recurring theme that happens with a few different guys over decades in your program. And I think at a certain point, Coach K has to say, you know what? This is not going to happen anymore. It's not going to happen anymore. And if and when it does happen, there's going to be real consequences for the guys on my team who do it, because I'm not going to sit here and put my own reputation at risk by making excuses for you guys after you do it. Like after this guy Grayson did what he did, they basically told him, okay, well, he's going to receive a warning from the league. What kind of warning from the league? Like the entire basketball world saw your player, Coach K, trip a guy not once but twice. And at what point do you say enough is enough? And bring the guy Grayson forward and say, hey, this was not an accident. It was done on purpose. He's going to be suspended for X amount of games. And if he does anything like it again, we're going to kick him off the team permanently because apparently he doesn't get it. That's what Coach K should be saying as the guy who represents, this hallowed tradition in Duke basketball and the U.S. Olympic basketball, etc. It is a reflection on him. And it's not an accident, Coach K, when you recruit these same guys over and over who do this same kind of thing. And it's just not a good look for you. It's not a good look for Duke. It's not a good look for the program. And I just think that he needs to do some things to actively address it. And it's definitely not just a black-white thing. There are certain dudes, because I think he's had a couple of black dudes who were a little bit soft, if not questioned about some things, but they didn't necessarily go to this kind of tripping and stepping on guys kind of thing that Laettner was involved in. I think J.J. Redick had an issue back in the day, and now this guy Grayson Allen. Or if you're even a guy who's going to dive at balls and dive on people like Wojciechowski used to do, or what have you. I just think it's not an ideal look. But again, it's not a black-white thing, because the although some people are looking at it that way somewhat. I think Duke has its own reputation, but there's been three brothers over the past 8 years, the Plumlee brothers, who have gone to Duke, all like big 7-foot dudes. Two of them play in the NBA now. This third one apparently is not going to go right to the NBA. Apparently he's going to go serve our country. I think either in the Army or the Navy or something. But, those three guys have been there. Now, they all come from one family, but they've been there for the past 8 years. I haven't heard anybody say that any one of them was some, punk, or was doing something that was wrong, or was taking cheap shots at people. So it's not every kid, and it's certainly not every white kid. It's some of the specific kids that Coach K recruits. And he keeps on making excuses for them, and that's why it continues to happen. And that's what I'm just calling for it to stop. Because, again, there's guys like, there's other guys who have been wildly successful in the program who didn't have any of this follow them. And I just think that Coach K could do much, much better instead of trying to give these guys a pass. I think in contrast, if Coach K were to look at one of his colleagues, like Bill Self, who's the coach of Kansas, he took one of his guys to the woodshed earlier this year because he thought the guy should not have taken a late game shot. The guy took in a game that Kansas had effectively already won. The guy took a shot at the rim and late game shot and, ran up the score by another 2 points on a breakaway layup. And, Coach Bill Self was no pun intended, was beside himself in anger and frustration because he thought it was extremely Bush League that the kid did that. Well, if that's Bush League for a kid to take a shot late in the game and score another bucket, then you got to be able to say to yourself, well, then it must be wrong what my guys are doing if they're tripping people, etc. And those are the kinds of things that, to me, just bring about, kind of hate for the Duke program, which I just find to be, completely unnecessary at the end of the day. And now, and I will say one other thing about the Duke program, and this is not a reason to hate it, but it may be enlightening for some of the audience members. I think Duke gets a bad rap, in part because there are a couple of well-known announcers that just ride Duke's jock so hard. They're just like, Duke. And Dick Vitale is one of those guys who just, everything Duke does is great. It's the Camden Crazies. Yeah, they're crazy. They're on their feet in Camden. The Camden Crazies. Let me tell you about a firsthand experience, my own personal firsthand experience going into Duke. I went to Duke and went to a game there, and I was absolutely outraged. Because, for years, I had heard about the Camden Crazies, and you hear Dick Vitale, and what does he say? The Camden Crazies, they're on their feet. So you're thinking that, okay, so these kids are on their feet all game long. Oh my God, they must be so excited. They must be so inspired. They must be so fired up that they have just elected to stand on their feet and just cheer for the entire game. That's just incredible dedication. Guess what? Sports fans? I went to the Duke game. Halftime comes, and the kids who are all jammed up underneath the baskets, who are on their feet, they start walking off of risers. There's risers, like a church choir has risers. There's risers. There are no seats, folks. Guess what? The big myth is that Dick Vitale would have you believe that these kids are so incredibly enthusiastic that they are just on their feet cheering nonstop during the game, and then they actually have a place to sit. There's nowhere to sit, folks. There are no seats. I could not believe it. I absolutely could not believe it. So, I mean, there were seats where I was. I was up, I was further up in the arena, and I was in a regular seat, which was a very uncomfortable seat, by the way, because it's a really old gym. It's like the Palestra in Philadelphia. So it's a really old gym. You're jammed into the seat. not very accommodating at all in terms